Hey guys, it's Chanel again, and I'm going to just jump right into this review of the Torqbar. As many people have, I've heard about this brand pretty much from the beginning of when I started to get into hand spinners, like 1 or 2 months ago, and I was so excited to get my hands on one. Recently, MD Engineering, they had a couple in stock. They had a couple of different variants of the Torqbar in stock. So inside, when you open the Torqbar, you are going to get your Torqbar in a little shell of plastic, which I don't have anymore. I took it off. But you get your Torqbar. Let me just change the focus here. You get the Torqbar. You get a sticker. You get a little keychain. Don't know if you can see that. A little keychain that can go on either end of the Torqbar. And it also comes with a package of nerds, which I gave to my little sister. I don't have it here. So I have had this for about 4 days now. I've pretty much been using this as my main hand spinner so that I could give it a thorough, proper review. And although I've only had this for about 4 days now, I have managed to do this. Yes, those are some scratches on the button. I will explain how that happened soon. In the meantime, though, I'm going to turn it over so I don't have to look at that atrocity. So I think there's going to be like two main people that are watching this video. There's going to be the person who is new to the whole hand spinning community. They've seen cool variants of the Torqbar and how it can come in all different kinds of colors and like designs. And they want to know more about like, well, what makes this so special? Why is it so popular? They want to know, should my first hand spinner be a Torqbar? It's a bit of an investment. And there's a second person that I think is watching this video. There's the people that are more of a hand spinning enthusiast. They understand that the Torqbar, was the one that started it all and is extremely popular. They understand why, but now they're wondering to themselves, well, I have a couple of hand spinners. Is the Torqbar worth the extra investment? Should my next purchase be a Torqbar? Is it actually worth it, like everyone says? And to both of those individuals that have their own specific questions, I would actually say yes. It is worth the purchase. If this is going to be your first hand spinner and you're willing to wait, I really don't think you're going to go wrong. You might go wrong on purchasing the wrong metal. Perhaps you are really into light spinners and you really want something that's super easy to fidget with like little to no fatigue. But if you're new to hand spinners, then maybe you wouldn't realize that titanium might be your thing, and perhaps you end up buying copper, which is a lot heavier. So perhaps you might buy the incorrect metal, but if you're new to hand spinners, I still don't think you would be going wrong with buying a Torqbar as long as you know the right metal for you. And for the person who's the enthusiast and they want to know, well, is it worth it? Is it worth that extra investment? I would say it is. It's not like hugely different from other hand spinners, but what makes it different is that it's like perfect in what it does do, and other hand spinners have kind of replicated what the Torqbar does, but no one has, in my opinion, yet done it as well as what they've done. So before I get into actually reviewing the Torqbar bit by bit, I just sort of want to compare it to some of the other hand spinners that I have. So I've got the Torqbar here. I've got the OD spinner over here. This is brass, by the way, and this is steel. And then we've got the Hyperstone over here, which is also brass, and it's got some steel on the outer edges of the button here. And so what's the difference? If I could speak to myself before I purchased these other two hand spinners, I would still tell myself to buy the OD spinner, although they all have a lot of similarities. What's different about them? Well, I first want to preface this by saying that I'm really not knocking any of them. I mean, I have had my major criticisms of the Hyperstone in terms of the set screw issues, which I have fixed by gluing it, but I had to do that myself. But in terms of how they spin and how they feel, like they all are different and unique, and that doesn't mean that they are poor in comparison to one another. It's like having a Porsche and a Benz and I don't know, some other fancy car. I'm not into cars, but the point is that just because they're different doesn't mean that one necessarily is better than the other. They all have different feels. So one of the immediate differences that I can say is like the button play. For example, there's like very little play with the button when you're spinning it. There's a lot more. Well, here I had to glue it, and even with me gluing it, there's still quite a bit of play. And here, there's a little bit of play as well. And this is not necessarily something that is a game breaker for either of these two spinners, but I mean, it does say something about the quality and the feel of the spin. Like it feels like, it does say something about the quality and the feel of the spin. Again, I'm just talking about differences. I'm not trying to say what's better or what's worse. This one, for the Torqbar, the button is like drastically smaller than any of the other hand spinners that I have. So if you can see here, pretty thin. And now if I compare that to the Hyperstone here, drastically thinner. Let me just move my fingers around. And then now if we add the OD into the equation, oh, it's kind of hard to hold all three. Ooh. So the Torqbar's buttons are by far the slimmest, and this means that you cannot, oh, let me just hide that shame right there. You cannot table spin it. Not a huge deal breaker for me, but it might be for some other people, but you can't spin it. It took me a while to get used to the fact that the buttons were so small, but after a while I appreciated the fact that everything felt so much more compact. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, this now feels too big for my hands, I don't like it. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it gives it its own unique sort of feel to it. It feels compact, it feels very well thought out, it feels discreet. It's like the sound of it, it has a very unique sound profile in comparison to some of my other spinners. I think a better comparison would be the Hyperstone, because these are both made out of brass. Mind you, I had to glue this in, so it's not even like the original sound necessarily that you would have if you had a set screw. But the sound and the feel is different. Because everything is so small here, everything just feels lighter. Even though these are both brass, they both have similar lengths. It feels lighter, it feels more, I don't know, contemporary in a sense because of that slim profile. It's like, I don't know why we keep using cars, but it's like having a convertible versus a SUV. Both are good, but something, it just makes you feel really cool and sexy about having the convertible with the drop top as opposed to the SUV. Another difference that these hand spinners have, that they all try to achieve, but they do it through different methods, is the area that they use to give you a space to like spin the actual hand spinning device. So here the hand spinner, you have these curves here, just like the slimming profile around the buttons, and then these additional weights, although I admit they are not the most necessarily attractive things, they end up being really useful in terms of gripping them and using it for a preloaded flick. It ends up being super comfortable, like your finger can latch on to what it's gripping and with just ease without it being sharp or causing any fatigue. It just ends up creating a really smooth, really pleasurable spin. The way the OD spinner goes about it is it has like these raised platforms. I'm sure that's not the technical term for it, but that's what I'm going to call them. And they get smaller as they get higher, but it's a little bit harder to get that really strong grip when you go for a preloaded flick. But again, you can still do a great preloaded flick with the OD spinner. And then with the Hyperstone is actually very similar to the Torqbar in the fact that it has just like a very deep additional weight on the edge, which allows you to flick and grab it and go from there. However, Due to the set screw issues and due to the additional weight because of the thick buttons and even the thickness of the additional weights here, it doesn't necessarily feel the same. This kind of curbs here and allows your finger to grab it sort of anywhere, and it feels like one smooth motion. However, because these curves are going with the exterior curve of the body, it still feels a little bit more difficult, more harsh when you flick it. And again, I'm not saying that it's painful or uncomfortable, but I'm just trying to highlight how they feel different. So with these variants in mind, if you are new to hand spinners and you want to get a hand spinner that you are certain that you're going to like, I mean, I really don't think that you can go wrong with the Torqbar because it's a classic. And if you are an enthusiast and you enjoy the fact that you have different hand spinners and they all have different feels and different qualities to them, different pros and cons, like that's where I'm at. I don't regret having the Hyperstone. I definitely do not regret having the OD spinner. There's similarities and there's differences, and I still love them all for it. Like there are times where I put this down and I pick up the OD or I pick up the Hyperstone. But if you're an enthusiast and you want to have something that feels different and feels like a classic, then I also totally recommend getting the OD spinner. For me to just give a general review about some of the features. So this is brass, and as I mentioned before, I really like brass. I like the sound of it. I like how it patinas over time and it gives it its own unique sort of look and aesthetic compared to another person's brass spinner, which will patina in a different way. In terms of the aesthetic, if I just saw this on the street, I remember the first time I saw a Torqbar, and I looked at it and I was like, what's the big deal? I liked when people modded it and had like different colors, or they anodized their titanium versions, or sometimes they'll put cool trits on it or whatever. But in its original form like this, I didn't necessarily think it was that inspiring when I looked at it. Now I like the aesthetic of the Torqbar, I think primarily because I associate a lot of positive things with it in terms of the value that it has in the community and its history. Like, it's short history, but it still has a relatively positive history about at least how it spins and how it feels, the quality of it. So in terms of the look, it's not necessarily the most stylish design, but it still is a very classic. The weight is about perfect for me, and I love the way they distribute it. Everything again has a very thin profile, which I like. Some people may not like it. I mean, my hands are, I think they're pretty average sized for a woman, but maybe for a guy that's like 6'5", he might find it a little bit too small and too slim for his liking. And there are additional buttons that you can put on it. A lot of people do change up the buttons, but right now for me, I do like the size of it and the weight of it and how the weight is distributed. The spin feels amazing for me. When I first took it out of the box, obviously you have to let the bearing like wear in over time. And when I first took it out, I was not feeling the spin. I was like, what a waste of money. And after a couple of hours of spinning it, like the bearing really wears in and the spin becomes near quiet and it feels just incredibly smooth. Every push is effortless. I have described the Hyperstone spin, which I really like the feel of the spin. I've described it like going through butter. It has a little bit of a thickness to it, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but like there's a little bit of give when you're spinning it. And it feels like butter, you're going through something thick, but it's still smooth. This feels like going through, I don't even know what to compare it to, like sugar water. There is a little bit of resistance, like the slightest bit of resistance when you spin it, but it just feels so light and effortless and smooth and sweet. When I took it out of the box, the spin time I got for it, it had to be vertical because, again, you cannot do any kind of table spin. But with the vertical spin, I got 3 minutes for it, which is longer than any spin that I had for any of my other spinners out of the box. So that was great. So now to talk about this. Okay, a little bit of history. Perhaps you know, perhaps you don't, but the makers of Torqbar, originally Scam Design and now MD Engineering, they have a bit of a reputation for not having the greatest customer service. So I've had positive and negative experiences with the limited interactions I've had with their Facebook administration. I messaged them about a week after I purchased this to figure out when it was shipping. They replied back pretty quickly, so that was positive. After I received this, I could not for the life of me get the buttons off, and that was like a running theme. It's like a running theme for me, clearly, because I had the same problem with the OD spinner. Mark was nice enough to message me back as soon as possible, and he gave me some solutions, and I like, thank God I figured it out myself. But with these guys, I messaged them and I told them that I was having trouble getting the buttons off. What was their solution? What was their suggestion? I even messaged people in the hand spinning, like in spin space, and I asked for suggestions, and everyone gave suggestions, and none of them were working. So I tried heating it up. I tried, using all my force. I did try the tape thing, and it didn't work at first. And I messaged the MD Engineering Facebook page. They read my message, like I saw that they read it. I sent 2 messages, one after the other, not like 2 messages over time. And they saw it and they did not reply to it, which seems like something small, I understand. But if you are running a small business, people kind of have an expectation that you are going to have a different kind of quality service than, for example, Walmart. Well, even if I messaged Walmart, they would get back to me pretty quick, within 24 hours, I imagine. I've never had to, but they have a huge thing about having positive customer service. And when you have a smaller business and people know your name, they know your Facebook page, they know who you are, the person who owns this company, and you're messaging the company page, they do kind of expect that sort of camaraderie, like, I'm supporting your business, I'm not supporting clones, I want your business to grow, I appreciate your product. And when you contact them and you don't get the response that you expect, especially for something that you've already purchased from them, it's a little bit disheartening, especially when people have already said a lot of negative things about their customer service. And so to this day, I have not got a response about how I'm supposed to take off the buttons. So I took it into my own hands, kind of in spite, because I was like, well, why? I paid 120, which ends up being like 140, 160 Canadian for this product, and I can't even take off the buttons and see the bearing and clean it properly. Like, what is this? So I tried a bunch of things. One of the things I tried was getting a wrench and then putting something soft on top of the button to cover it so that the wrench could grip it. Unfortunately, because I'm an idiot, the cover that I put on top of it slipped in one go, and then I ended up scratching it, and I wanted to cry a little bit. On the plus side, I've already ordered buttons from a different company that should be coming in soon. But still, the fact that it happened at all and that I haven't received any message from them about how to deal with the situation, because they don't know that I've solved the issue. For all they know that I'm still struggling to get the buttons off, like, that's not necessarily the most positive experience. That is one negative that I will say about the company. So in conclusion, if you are okay with understanding that the company does not offer the greatest level of customer service, but you want a quality hand spinner that is going to feel timeless and is going to be efficient and smooth and, not have issues out of the box necessarily, I would thoroughly recommend going with the Torqbar. I mean, I just purchased a couple of other hand spinners, so I'm trying to be conservative in my purchases, but had I not, I would definitely buy a different one. I would want to buy other ones. I would try the titanium, I would try maybe the steel, or I would get some mods or whatever, because I do really, really love this Torqbar. Despite the questionable customer service experience, I'd still recommend it. So thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more reviews and more interesting videos, vlog-like videos about hand spinners. And thank you for your support and for your comments and for your likes. Bye.